Five reasons
Did
we're
you
a
know that the
Presbyterian
British
nation.
called the American...
What the fuck? Why did my headphones turn off? Yeah, they disconnected. Hold on. My bad. Yeah,
Revolution,
yes,
the Presbyterian
Daddy,
revolt.
yes.
Maybe this video can help you understand why. Sup guys, I'm Redeemed Zoomer. Happy 4th of July. Happy Kilometers Are Fake Day. Because seriously, I've never seen a kilometer. So, today we're going to talk about why America is kind of Presbyterian in its founding. Of course, America's always been a nation of religious freedom. It's never been constitutionally Presbyterian.
Yeah, it's been secularist. It's almost like it's secular. No, secularism is evil. That's what I don't like. No, that's atheism. No.
Not saying America's a Presbyterian theocracy or anything, but I do think a lot of the elements that went into the foundation of America were more so Presbyterian than any other religious group. So here are 5 reasons why this is. So, John Witherspoon was the only pastor to sign the Declaration of Independence, and he was a Presbyterian minister. He wasn't just one of the most influential Presbyterians of his time, he was one of the most influential Christians of his time. He was known as America's pastor during the Revolutionary War. He was sort of spiritually guiding the country during that time. And he was also the president of Princeton University. Now, Princeton, as I'm going to talk about later, Princeton was founded by Presbyterians for the purpose of training Presbyterian ministers. And he had a massive influence at Princeton University and over the theology of Princeton, because Princeton for a while had supported sort of like the revival theology of Jonathan Edwards and stuff, but John Witherspoon imported Scottish common sense realism from Scotland to Princeton, because he's from Scotland, and that sort of philosophy defined not just American Presbyterianism, but American religion overall for like the next 200 years. Scottish common sense realism, it's a very common sense and practical philosophy, and that influences how Americans often think about religion. I think it's had both good and bad effects. But the point is that this guy was very, very influential on American religion, and he was Presbyterian, and he signed the Declaration of Independence. Alright. So the second reason is more explicit.
He was one of the signatories on the Declaration of Independence. That means that, okay.
Lex Rex, which means law is king, or rule of law. This concept comes from a book that was written by this guy, Samuel Rutherford, called Lex Rex. Now, Samuel Rutherford was one of the most important Westminster divines.
By the way, just so you understand, first of all, this person is Presbyterian. Presbyterians are, like, the Dungeons and Dragons kind of Christians. They're nerds, okay? They're like, that's what they like to think of themselves as, I think. They're like they're the actually Christians. I disagree with the Presbyterian Church probably more than any other Protestant church. On their views on continuity are ridiculous. They're at least they're not. They're usually not Zionist, is my understanding. But because of their views on continuity, it does open the door for Zionist thought. But anyway, let's just keep watching.
One of the most
I don't really like
of the
Presbyterians
Westminster
that much.
Confession.
It'd be one
Samuel
of the last
Rutherford was a
churches I
Scottish
joined.
Covenanter, and he was a very high-level scholastic theologian. He was a supralapsarian. He was a Scotist. He believed strongly that baptism saves. He said it's like a hyper-physical means of regeneration. So this guy was like really advanced in his thinking about theology. He was reading through Thomas Aquinas and Duns Scotus and William of Ockham and Suarez and Vasquez, all the Jesuit scholastics. So he really knew this stuff, but he was also very skilled in political philosophy. So this concept of lex rex, the idea that law is king, that means the law is above any human kings. So that means if any king disobeys the law, you can disobey the king in order to follow the law. So this was the logical justification for the American Revolution, not just in theory, but they actually used it. They actually appealed to Samuel Rutherford's Lex Rex. Many of them knew about it because many of them were educated Presbyterians who knew about Samuel Rutherford, who had lived about a century earlier. So in many ways, even though Samuel Rutherford was not American at all, he was Scottish, his philosophy was sort of like the justification, sort of like the blueprint for the foundation of America. And Rutherford wasn't just a Presbyterian guy, he was like the most influential Presbyterian of the 1600s, which was the period of high Protestant orthodoxy. Alright, so the third reason is the Scottish Covenanters in general.
That's really cool. I mean, you're not going to convince me that motherfucker had more to do with the resistance against the British rule than somebody like John Locke. You're just not. Okay? It wasn't, look, I'm sorry, but it was not the absence of, it wasn't religious thought that caused the fucking American Revolution to happen. It just wasn't. Okay? Not really. Actually, if anything, it typically hindered it. Okay? The king was the, ordained by God. Blah, blah, blah. No. What really sparked the revolution were liberal ideas, liberal ideals. It was liberalism. It was free market capitalism. Americans wanted free trade, and they wanted to do it without taxation, which was for a government that did not adequately represent them. Okay, taxation without representation. That was the main driving factor, not like, should we disobey the king? Oh, but he's the king. He's like,
we know that the American
authority.
Revolution
Like, yeah,
was in
that
the
was
1700s.
not really
in the 1600s,
a big factor.
there were the
I don't
wars
think.
of religion in Britain, where Britain was fighting over whether to be Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, or Congregationalist. The Scottish Covenanters were these very strict Presbyterians in Scotland who would not compromise with the king. They would not submit to any kings or bishops that required them to implement Anglican things. So the Scottish Covenanters had a lot of experience resisting the King of England in the 1600s. And there was this period during the Killing Times where the Scottish Covenanters were heavily persecuted. During that time, many of them ran away to America to seeking religious freedom because it was the Killing Times. It wasn't just what happens in America where somebody feels excluded. They were being violently persecuted and like drowned in the ocean. So they fled to America. So 100 years later, when the American Revolution happens, all these Scottish Covenanters have a lot of experience fighting the British Crown, and they were very big supporters of the American Revolution. Alright, the fourth reason is that the Presbyterian system of government, with its representative democracy and its checks and balances, was very influenced by Presbyterian government. So Presbyterian government is sort of a balance between authority and liberty. Presbyterian government is a hierarchy, but unlike the Catholic or Episcopal Church, it's not a hierarchy from above, it's like a hierarchy from below. It's like a bottom-up hierarchy. But it still is organized and hierarchical. So it resists tyranny from above.
Oh, my bad.
The way
I was playing it at normal
monarchy
speed.
would, and resists tyranny from below the way a pure democracy would. It's a representative democracy.
Yeah, I don't
the
wanna
Catholic and
I don't
Anglican
wanna
systems
watch
of government
this shit.
function more like a monarchy with Pope,
that
Archbishop, Bishop, whatever. And the Congregationalist system of government is more like a pure democracy, where the congregation, like the individuals in the congregation, can just vote on things. The Presbyterian system of government is where there are representatives from each congregation that get together in presbyteries to vote on things. It's sort of like the Senate or the House of Representatives. And this was a very clear influence on the Senate and the House of Representatives.
You could also just call it what it is, which is it's a republic form of governance. It's a republic. And yeah, that's also something that I knew about the Presbyterian Church, and I like that about the Presbyterian Church. That based Presbyterian
Church. It's the most
Church.
organized
Once
form
again,
of government. It resists, like I said, the Episcopal tyranny from above or the Congregationalist tyranny from below. And this actually did work out in real time. It does tend to form the most stable governments, whether we're talking about nations or churches, because, Europeans make fun of America for being like a new country, but if you're talking about how old the government is, I think America is like the second oldest consistent and continuous government in the world. I think San Marino or something might be older. But I think the American government has stayed like the same government much longer than most of the European governments have. And the Presbyterian Church has a lot of stability compared to other Protestant denominations. Although the Presbyterian Church did end up going liberal, it stayed traditional much longer than the Episcopalians or the Congregationalists, which are the other traditionally Calvinist denominations that have different forms of church government than the Presbyterians. All right, so now let's talk about American universities. I know that due to the internet and due to like a lot of the anti-elitist sentiment in modern Christianity, we don't think they're very important. But America's Ivy League schools were extremely important for defining the culture of America for most of its history. The Ivy League schools were the elite universities where many of the presidents, lawyers, scientists, doctors all came from, and most of the Ivy League schools were founded by Calvinists to train Calvinist ministers. Princeton was explicitly Presbyterian, Harvard, Yale, and Dartmouth were Congregationalist, and Brown University was Baptist, but it was all this, general Puritan Calvinistic mindset that founded the Ivy League universities. So you could also say America's like a Congregationalist nation. I think you could make a case for America being Congregationalist or Anglican or Presbyterian, but I think of the three, Presbyterians have had like the most influence, especially due to like the Scottish heritage and the similarity in church government. But something I really want to do with my channel is to bring back an emphasis on the importance of the traditional American university, because that's something that nobody except mainline Protestants really cares about anymore. Catholics don't care about it, Orthodox don't care about it, Evangelicals don't care about it, liberals don't care about it, Retreatists don't care about it. It's only mainline Protestants today that still care about the importance of the traditional American university, and that's something that I want to bring back. And I think that's something that we should think about on July 4th, America's Day, because the American university was so influential on shaping America into what it is today. Europeans with their, smug little, lukewarm Coke and their BAs with their toilets and eating snails or whatever. Europeans are often smug and think America's got no, culture or, elite architecture or whatever, but they have to see some American universities. Like, the American universities are like the cathedrals of American high culture. So they really need to spend some time there. All right, thank you guys for watching this video.
Yeah, I mean,
hope you understand
America has culture. A lot of it is borrowed from the immigrants that came over here, but yeah, I mean, I agree with that, of course. I also don't think that Europeans really say that a lot. Like, I never really understood the smarmy, smug European fucking trope or like characterization. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Yeah, anyway, every European I've ever met has been pretty chill, for the most part. And I've certainly never met any, America haters, for real. A lot of Europeans think that America is cool, unsurprisingly, because we have a culture that is similar to theirs, because we have immigrants from their country here. Okay, and that's just the way it is.